Hey everybody, it is me.
And me also again,
But
for
mostly
the
me.
third time.
But it's mostly me. So today, actually, I'm not going to be taking the helm on this one. This one's all him. Because it's...
Ha! So it's mostly me!
No.
Oh.
This is one that he's more familiar with. I mean, we both grew up with this a lot, but he kind of knows more expanded stuff about what went on with the company and behind the scenes and all that. It's Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Yeah, one of my favorite movies when I was a kid.
Mine too, and today it still stands as a guilty pleasure, although, objectively, it's not that great. I enjoy it, particularly because of the memories, but it's got a lot of pretty glaring flaws.
Yeah, that's kind of how I view it too. It's definitely a good nostalgia trip to watch it, but it's certainly not enjoyable to me, like right now, at all.
Mm-hmm.
Except for some of Alec Baldwin's like weird spaz moments. Other than that, obviously it's not meant for a 20-something-year-old.
Right. Although there are definitely two aspects that I can just say are objectively fantastic, and that is all the scenery and the music by Hummy Man. Hummy Man, that's his name. That's the composer.
I love it. So before we actually talk about the film, let's talk about the film and how it came to be.
So, quick summary of the franchise as a whole. It started back in 1943 when the Reverend Wilbur Awdry came up with some random stories about trains to entertain his son Christopher, who was sick. And then his wife's like, get them published or else. He's like, okay, fine. So he published them and they became super popular. Then, in 1984, this lady, Britt Allcroft, came across it and was like, hey, these stories are really cool. Should make a TV show. Actually, a lot of other people tried making TV shows and they all epically failed, but hers was the first one that actually caught on. So for the first 4 seasons of it, they were just adapting the books into TV stories, and everything was fine. And then when they got around to season 5, also this is around the time that the Reverend Wilbur Awdry died. But when they got to season 5, Britt Allcroft had the idea, I want to make a Thomas the Tank Engine movie. Because she wanted like that to be like her big thing. This big staple on the world with Thomas the Tank Engine. And then she's like, if I'm going to make a movie, a theatrical movie, I'm going to need to kind of start making my own stories and not just adapting the books. We got to kind of make it our own. And so they went into planning for this movie, Thomas and the Magic Railroad. There was actually a couple other, at least one, I'm blanking on what it was on the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure there was like another movie idea that they had instead, and then they came up with the Magic Railroad idea. But anyways, so they wrote the script for the Magic Railroad, and when it was scheduled to come out in the year 2000, which it did, but
lots of good things happened in 2000.
I happened.
Yes. He did it.
Anyways.
It was 1977. The year Jimmy Carter, our emperor, was inaugurated for the very first time.
So they made pretty much the entire movie based on their original script, with the villain of the movie, P.T. Boomer. He was this human biker guy, and when they screened it to test audiences, they didn't like it. So they had to go back and change, like, the entire movie within, like, a few months or something. So, it definitely showed in the final project. A lot of it was rushed and really convoluted and just kind of dumb in some aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So, the main villain that we ended up getting, who was just kind of a secondary villain before, was Diesel 10. Or they just refer to him as Diesel in this movie. But there's another character who's also named Diesel in the TV show. In the books, basically they just call all the Diesels Diesel.
Kind of racist, if you ask me.
It is kind of racist. It's like, I mean, a lot of people make the steam engine, diesel engine race comparison. And, like, it's somewhat valid, somewhat not. But, yeah.
Everyone's a little bit racist.
Exactly. So, this was the first time ever that Thomas the Tank Engine was voiced by someone other than the narrator, who at this point had been Ringo Starr, George Carlin, and Alec Baldwin. You know, the ideal children's show voice actors.
Ringo Starr, I can see. The other two, not
Right.
as much.
Yeah. Especially George Carlin, rest in peace.
And then this whole thing ended up having a devastating effect on the franchise, didn't it?
Yeah, it bombed hard. And Britt Allcroft and her company lost a lot of money.
So this is like the
And-
Jonah movie, but for Britt Allcroft's corporation.
Pretty much. And so after season 6, she sold the franchise over to Hit Entertainment.
Oh,
season
that's
7
like the worst choice. Everyone knows Hit Entertainment's like one of the worst children's shows companies ever.
Pretty much. Season 7 happened, and it was basically, like, Britt Allcroft still made it, but Hit owned it. Then when season 8 came in, Hit Entertainment just owned everything, and yeah.
And now it's ultra PC now, and oh, that's a topic for another
Right,
day.
yeah, it was going downhill, then it started to go uphill, and then it plummeted.
Yeah, but that's for another day. We're talking about the movie
Yeah.
itself right now, despite its disastrous results.
And speaking of the movie, it's not just a Thomas the Tank Engine movie. It's also a Shining Time Station movie. For those who don't know what Shining Time Station is, that was how they brought Thomas the Tank Engine to America, aside from VHSs and whatnot. But, so, it was originally, of course, a British thing, and they had Ringo Starr narrating it. And then they're like, like, Britt Allcroft, she's like, let's expand it. Let's bring it over to America. But the thing is, the episodes, which were all like 5 minutes, they were too short to have on like a regular TV airing block. So what she did is she created this sort of framing device called Shining Time Station, and it was a whole separate show, but in each episode of Shining Time Station, there'd be a little segment where Mr. Conductor, who was always played by the narrator of the Thomas Show, so it was originally Ringo Starr, and then George Carlin, and then Alec Baldwin only played him in the movie, but yeah, so Ringo Starr and George Carlin each played, and I think Michael Angelis did too. Yeah, he definitely did. But
You
anyways,
mean the Vice
so
Emperor?
the Fat Controller.
Yeah, the Vice Emperor.
You of course Confusion Angele.
Oh, I bet no one understands what we're talking about.
No. So, Shining Time Station, they had the segment where Mr. Conductor would just tell the Thomas stories, and that's how it was aired in America. And so for the movie, they integrated Shining Time Station and Thomas the Tank Engine into the same universe, kind of, or like multi-universe, where like the island of Sodor was some like magical alternate dimension or It's really weird. It doesn't really abide by the rules set into the universe in the books or TV show.
And even
Which
though,
is what?
even though it's like just kind of a cool little fan servicey thing that actually leads to a substantial problem in the movie, might as well just go ahead and start talking about the negatives first. It's not really a Thomas movie looking back. Thomas doesn't
Not-
get that much screen time.
No, he doesn't. And the screen time he does get often feels very forced and just like, well, we gotta have Thomas in here somewhere, so he gets to do this thing and just shows up.
What you said about the
'Cause,
production
yeah.
debunks it, but I used to actually, for a little while, think that this was supposed to be a Shining Time Station movie, but they couldn't get funding for it, so they had to throw Thomas in there. Like the Tom and Jerry movie, how there's a long-standing theory where it wasn't supposed to be Tom and Jerry, it was supposed to be this generic animated film, but because they couldn't get funding, they slapped Tom and Jerry on it.
Yeah, I think so. When I was mentioning this, made me remember this. When I was mentioning earlier, like kind of the original, had some original ideas for the movie that they were tossing around. I think there was originally like just a Shining Time Station the movie idea featuring Thomas, and then they just kind of reworked it all together into the Thomas movie featuring Shining Time Station. But I do remember, I'm pretty sure one of the movie idea was there was a Shining Time Station movie that was gonna be just that.
Because Thomas is a very inconsequential character. The only real main characters are super sad sack Peter Fonda, man, and hyped up on sugar Alec Baldwin.
And the granddaughter,
Yeah, but...
Mara
yeah,
Wilson.
Yeah, Girl Doubtfire, I guess.
Yeah. Which, fun fact, in case you didn't know, which you probably did, this was the last movie she ever appeared in.
Yeah, and she wasn't seen in public again until the Nostalgia Critics video.
Right, and...
May his reputation rest in not at all peace.
Yeah. But, yeah, so I guess partially that was because she was growing up and becoming a teenager and losing the little cutesy little girl side of her that had been there before.
I mean, if you look at some of her films like Miss Doubtfire or Miracle on 34th Street, she was never really a great actress. She was more just kind of marketable, kind of like the Olsen twins were in Full House.
Right. This is kind of off topic, but also sort of on topic. There's this funny joke. It's actually a real thing. Of Mara Wilson talking about some of her time with some of the other actors, and she mentions like the first conversation she had with the actor who played that other guy, the teenage guy. No, not Peter Fonda. The other kid, the guy who
Ray William
rode
Johnson.
the horse. Pat. His name is Pat.
Calvin Coolidge.
The actor's name was... No, his name was Cody McMains, if I remember correctly.
So Cody from Total Drama. Peter Oldering.
Almost that would kind of fit, just based on this conversation. Not quite, but almost. So she mentions in some like interview or something. This goes around in the Tom's fandom here and there. But like one of her first conversations with this Cody McMains guy, like she was just like talking to him, and he says something about how the magazines in the UK didn't like stack up to the ones he had back in America. Yeah, he just straight up said that to her, and she's like, "Okay, this guy's a weirdo."
Yep. So let's.
And also.
We got to get back on topic. This is getting enough.
Okay, good point. Good point.
Another issue is the writing feels really inconsistent. Sometimes it tries to be a fun, lighthearted kids film, but other times it takes itself way too seriously, like with the whole Peter Fonda lady engine.
Right,
thing.
it goes back and forth between like Alec Baldwin and Peter Fonda. Basically, every Alec Baldwin scene is just like this happy, crazy kids thing. Like especially because like he talks directly to the children through the TV, which I don't know how that works, but it does, I guess.
I guess we're just like coming along for the ride and you won't let us go until 90 minutes has ended.
Yep.
And a lot of Alec Baldwin's scenes don't do anything for the story either. It's just kind of him
not really
derping around, eating vegetables that make him say random words.
Right, yeah, because it's thinking food. They're good for the brain, which it leads to him calling Junior, the other conductor, who is one of the most useless characters in the movie. Like, he serves the purpose, like, about 5 to 10 minutes after he's introduced, and then after that he's just kind of there for comic relief.
If that. And for a big adaptation of Thomas that was supposed to be like this kind of big retrospect of the series, I guess, thus far, there's no characters in it. I mean, it's been years since I've seen the show, because, I stopped watching that when I was young, but I recognize all these characters because they were the core main characters. They don't throw in any of those side characters. I mean, to be fair, I probably wouldn't recognize many of them, but they'd be nice for the kids.
Literally, Edward isn't in the movie, which there is a reason for that. It's, at least, I believe it's at least rumored that his model wasn't working or something. But literally, Edward was the first character created. Even before Thomas, Edward was the first character to exist, and he's not in the movie.
And the Vice Emperor himself isn't even in this movie. He just appears over by phone, and he doesn't talk.
Right. The reason for that is because since, like, in the TV show before, like, he's just, like, the little wooden model, they didn't want to have, at least I'd assume, they didn't want to have, like, a live-action, like, different portrayal of Sir Topham Hatt, a.k.a. the Fat Controller. Although since this movie was kind of more going by the American side of things, they probably would have called him Sir Topham Hatt, not the Fat Controller. Because that's another complaint. This isn't something that I really, or most people would complain about too much, but a lot of people complain that the movie is, quote-unquote, too bloody Americanized.
I can actually kind of see that. I haven't watched the show in preparation for this. In fact, watching the movie this weekend was the first time I'd seen it since I was like 7. But like I do definitely remember that even as a kid, I thought that this had a very, very different tone than the series did itself.
Right. Like, all the engine characters do have their British accents intact, except for Henry for some reason. But, like, and Diesel 10 has an American accent, although he originally had an Australian accent for some reason. But, like, of course, this kind of ties into the Shining Time Station accent, or aspect, because that was an American thing that they used specifically for America. And so they couldn't Britishize that necessarily, so they had to kind of do this mix of both. But since they got all these, like, A-list actors, like Alec Baldwin, and they couldn't, like, since he was the narrator at that time in Season 5 for the US, and, like, it was just weird overlap, and it ended up just like, it's just American.
There's one more big flaw I have with this before we get to the positives. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the movie feels a little arrogant. I hate to say it because, you know, it was one of my favorite kids' movies, but it feels like it's too big for its britches. Like, it feels like it's building itself up. Like, oh, we're great, we're epic and stuff. This thing isn't going to kill our company in any way, nor is it going to have a bad reception from the fan base. It just kind of felt like, yeah, this is it. We're leaving an impact on cinema. Kind of like what you said with what Britt Allcroft, is that her name? Was saying, like, this is going to be my mark kind of thing. It definitely shows. Because there are some parts where a kid's movie, it gets really pretentious, and it's not needed. I mean, there are some like grandiose things in there that don't really pay off. Like, the action scenes are just all chases, but to be fair, what else can you do with trains? But it kind of feels like one of those movies. We're going to mention this later in the final film we reviewed this week. But it's one of those films that tries so hard to appeal to everybody that it ends up kind of alienating most people. I mean, I'll always have a soft spot for the film, but I
for sure.
just realized this watching that it does feel like that. It's too much of a people pleaser.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because it was kind of, like you said, like Britt Allcroft was trying so hard to make her mark, and which a lot of that is, I feel like when I feel like, so a lot of people say, like, oh, if it had just been untampered with and the original version had come out, it would be good. And I've read the original script, and a lot of the flaws, like Alec Baldwin's over-enthusiasm and Peter Fonda's over-depression, and some of the weird, unexplained magic stuff and the Americanization, it's intact. Like a lot of those flaws are still there.
Oh.
But the real thing that would have been salvaged is just the movie not being totally rushed, which would help, and would overall probably make it objectively a little bit better. But still, like, it wouldn't make it objectively good, per se. And I think even Britt Allcroft probably, I would imagine, had kind of some of that thought, was like, oh, if I had had it my way, it would have been good, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, and that maybe kind of played into some of that, like, pretentiousness.
I mean, I'm pulling up Rotten Tomatoes right now, and they're destroying it. It has a 1-star, 19%, 39% audience approval. Critic consensus says, kids these days demand cutting-edge special effects or at least a clever plot with cute characters. This movie has neither, having lost in its Americanization what British original did so right. Despite the weird wording, I completely agree. Also, what is up with Peter Fonda's face on the poster? He looks a little kind of out of there.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But now let's talk about the positives, because like what you said, there definitely are some positives.
Like, the set pieces and scenery, particularly the stuff just on Sodor, like, looks so great.
It's like the models just jumped out of the TV and came to life. They look great.
Right. The TV show, the classic series and all, has always had some really great scenery and models, because that's, like, what they had to do to make it good, because it was really simple stories, little trains, the mouths don't even move, so it had to really depend on a lot of its outstanding scenery and really realistic backdrops and all. And this movie is no different, especially when you're integrating live-action people with the models and making it a fully fledged cinematic movie. Like, the Sodor sets do look really great and realistic, even though you got all these little toy trains that their faces don't move.
Yeah. But it does look pretty good, though. It looks like definitely a stepped up version of the show. So it's not like one of those things like Doug's first movie or Hey Arnold the movie where it's just a prolonged episode put onto the big screen. No, they put their all into the look and the sound. The music sounds great, whether it be the score or the extremely few music numbers.
Right. Yeah. A lot of so in the movie, one of the music numbers is the Really Useful Engine song. It's like a redone version of that, which was just a song from the classic show. And originally they had like quite a few other songs from the show that were going to be in the movie, but none of them ended up being in it. I don't know why or where they were going to be, but yeah. But then they've got songs like the Shining Time song.
Whenever I hear that, I always just get blasted back to when I was a kid. Like, I didn't get like misty-eyed, but I did get like a little inside emotional, kind of like, oh man, it's like I'm a kid again.
Yeah, I always loved listening to that music. The whole soundtrack is just it takes the original Mike O'Donnell, Junior Campbell, who were the original composers, in case you don't know, and it just like cinematizes it, and then when it gets its own stuff, it's still just like really strong and all, and just brings you back. And of course, the guy's name, Hummy Man. It's a really funny sounding name.
Yeah, it's HUMMIEMANN, but it's awesome.
Hummy Man.
It's like a superhero.
Hummy Man.
And he's from Quebec. Of course he's from Quebec. But that's kind of what Thomas in the Magic Robot, I think, kind of is for most people now. I mean, it was destroyed at the time, but now a lot of people, ourselves included, admit that it's not a good movie, really, but, you know, it's something we held dear, and we can't blame it too much for all the joy it gave us. I remember I don't think we ever owned it, but, like, we'd keep renting it from, like, Blockbuster and stuff. I think we probably should have bought it, but it was like once a month we'd rent it, and I'd make a night of it when I was young.
I have the VHS and the DVD. The VHS is broken, though.
Do you have, like, the clamshell one, where it's, like, made of that plasticky styrofoam stuff? Oh, yeah. That takes me back. Yeah.
And then it got a cereal bar smushed into the VHS tape, so it doesn't work anymore.
How did that happen?
I don't remember, but it did.
So, I'm looking up some, like, stories on the film, and before we go real quick, I'm going to read what it said. When the film was released in the United Kingdom, the UK audience, who was not familiar with the Shining Time Station series, as it was created for the United States exclusively, blamed the filmmakers for Americanizing it and taking away the charm that the original series had. The Americans, in turn, had the exact opposite response. They loved the Shining Time Station, but felt misleaded due to the lack of Thomas in there. They said it should have been marketed more as Thomas and Shining Time Station, or had split them into separate films. Due to both of the bad receptions that they got, albeit with the American release having a slightly better reception, the film was nearly avoided after opening weekend and made exactly its budget. With a budget of $19 million, it ended up grossing $19.7 million. However, this is still considered a failure due to the extreme advertising push that the company made to get the film recognized, and also for the wide release in both UK and America at the same time, which is a very costly measure. So, there's an old film saying where, in order for a film to be successful, it's going to have to make double its budget. This made, like, exactly its budget.
Right.
And because, like it said here, it did some more extravagant things, again, with Brett Alcroft trying to make it her mark. They kind of overstepped and did a double release and an extra big advertising push, which ended up dooming the franchise forever. The thing that was supposed to save it and help make it bigger ended up killing it in the long run.
Yep.
Which, it's sad to say, both Jonah and Thomas are great things that we love from our childhood. Well, not great, but, you know, we loved them. And then they ended up dooming two of the things we liked a lot.
Yeah.
Although, this one I think is worse, because at least VeggieTales got put out of its misery. This is still going.
Right. And it's gone through some weird loop-de-loops where it was just kind of in this broken place of mediocrity. Then it just drops down into ultimate stupidity. And then it got picked up by Mattel and Andrew Brenner, who were doing great until PC everything and throw in all these other things that we don't need and make the trains bounce.
But that's a story for another day. What'd you guys think of the film? Comment below, let us know. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
That rhymed.
Yes, that was on purpose.